This is lesson 5.5b. We're going to use the unit rate to solve problems. A unit rate is a rate in which the comparison is to one unit. So often when you hear us say unit rate, that means how much or how many for one. So if we're looking at this word problem, it says, how far could the family travel in 8 hours if they maintained the same rate of speed? So we have a family bicycling here, and it says that they can ride 25 miles in 5 hours. Well, that's a speed, that's miles per hour, and that's our first ratio. So we're going to write the ratio. 25 miles, remember to be writing this using the units, 25 miles in 5 hours. Now, the directions here say to use the unit rate, so I can't just do my simple cross multiply then divide here because they're telling us to use the unit rate. But we are going to figure out how far the family could travel in 8 hours. So am I going to put the 8 hours over here? Am I going to label the units on the top or on the bottom? I'm going to have to put the 8 hours on the bottom because hours and hours have to be in the same spot. So now in order to find this using unit rate, we have to figure out how many miles the family can ride in 1 hour. So if we have 25 miles in 5 hours, we have to figure out how far can the family ride in 1 hour. So rewrite that in your notebook, labeling the numbers. That way I make sure I'm consistent. My miles are on top, my hours are on the bottom. So now how do we go from 5 to 1? From 5 to 1, we divide by 5. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. 25 divided by 5. What is the unit rate here? How many miles can they ride in 1 hour? They can ride 5 miles in 1 hour. That is the unit rate. We just figured out, okay, they can ride 5 miles in 1 hour. Now I can figure out pretty easily how many miles they can ride in 8 hours. Again, hours goes on the bottom so that our units stay consistent. How do we go from 1 to 8? We multiply times 8. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top times 8. 5 times 8, 40 miles. So now if I wanted to check my work using my cross multiply and divide, I can do that. 25 times 8 is 200. So then 5 times something has to be 200. And it would be that 40 miles. So it checks. So you can use that cross multiply then divide if you wanted to check it there. Now let's look at this try it problem. It says a canoeing club travels 78 miles in 3 days. How far could they travel in 5 days if they maintain the same speed? So first we have to write a ratio. How many miles in 3 days? So let's write 78 miles in 3 days as a ratio. We would have 78 miles to 3 days. We want to know how far can they travel, how many miles in 5 days. So we have to use unit rate here because we can't simply go from 3 to 5. So we're going to use unit rate to figure out how many miles they traveled in 1 day. So we would have 78 miles. Notice how I'm rewriting this with units. You should be doing that too. 78 miles in 3 days. Okay, so then how many miles do they travel in 1 day? So now how do we go from 3 to 1? We divide by 3. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. Divide by 3. So what is the unit rate? How many miles do they travel in 1 day? 26 miles. Okay, so now that I figured out that they travel 26 miles in 1 day, I need to figure out how many miles they travel in 5 days. So how many miles do they travel in 5 days? Well, we have to go from 1 to 5 times 5. So then 26 times 5 is 130 miles. So let's use our cross multiply then divide here to see if it matches. 5 times 78, 390 divided by 3 is 130 miles. It checks. So for a question like this, again, it tells you to use the unit rate. So we're using the unit rate. That's what we're practicing. But then you can check it using the cross multiply then divide. Let's look at number 3 here. It says a bathroom shower streams 5 gallons of water in 2 minutes. So let's write that as a ratio. We would have 5 gallons in 2 minutes. So find the unit rate for gallons per minute and describe it in words. So we have to figure out how many gallons per 1 minute. So how many gallons in 1 minute? So I want you to figure this out. What's the unit rate here? How many gallons of water will stream in 1 minute? So 2 to 1, you would have to divide by 2. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. Divide by 2. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5 gallons. So it would be 2.5 gallons in 1 minute. And that's how we would describe it. 2.5 gallons in 1 minute. Now it says find the unit rate for minutes per gallon. So that means minutes per 1 gallon. So we're going to use the same ratio here. 5 gallons in 2 minutes. But now we're going to figure out how many minutes in 1 gallon. So how long does it take for 1 gallon of water to stream? So how do you go from 5 to 1? Divide by 5. Whatever you do to the top, you have to do to the bottom. Divide by 5. 2 divided by 5 is 0.4. So 0.4 minutes.